Just learned that at least 1,000 people have been killed in Israel, according to its embassy. And health ministries in Gaza and the West Bank say at least 800 more were killed there. Among the dead, at least 11 Americans. There are also dozens of hostages believed to be held by Hamas. The exact number is not clear, at least at this point, but President Biden has said it is likely that some Americans are among those kidnapped. Today, some of the families of the missing are calling on the Biden administration to step up the push to get the people they love home safely.
And we are asking on behalf of my family for President Biden, where we are sure his heart is in the right place when it comes to Israel, and Secretary of State to do what they can to make this end for us as soon as possible to become family.
Let's get right to our chief White House correspondent, Peter Alexander, who is live for us at the White House. Peter, as we are looking at the setup there for the president, what can we expect to hear from him?
Well, Hallie, I think we're certainly going to hear from President Biden in his first remarks since we learned that 11 Americans at least were among those killed in the awful massacre that took place in the southern part of that country, vehemently, fiercely condemning the Hamas terrorists for their actions there. We are getting some new reporting as we speak right now. A U.S. official telling NBC News that a team of technical experts who have an expertise in hostage recovery are now en route to Israel, where they will be assisting, not helping extract, but assisting the Israelis in their efforts to try to retrieve those hostages believed to be in Gaza right now. Among the unanswered questions at this time is whether, in fact, that number is in the dozens or perhaps a small number. You heard from a small number of Americans about their loved ones right now. American officials are still trying to wrap their heads around exactly how many Americans are still unaccounted for and missing at this time. We are told by this U.S. official, they stress that there will not be, as of right now, any special forces or any American boots on the ground to help in this effort. But the U.S. is certainly delivering aid. Even as we speak, military aid is en route, we are told by national security officials, to Israel right now. I suspect we'll hear from the president as he details that the USS Gerald Ford carrier strike group that includes 4 guided missile destroyers is moving into the eastern Mediterranean. Has it now arrived there? It is an effort to try to deter both Hamas and Iran from any further attacks on Israel. And the U.S. is also sending F-35s to that region. Hallie, just to take a step back right now, the president, in his own words, has described the agony, the loss of life here on the Israeli side, certainly as unfathomable. He says the United States will stand shoulder to shoulder with the Israelis. And a senior administration official told me within the last several minutes that the priority for this administration right now is that the terrorists are held accountable and that Israel conducts what it describes as necessary and proportionate actions to try to help Israel defend itself. As you saw, one of the president's aides just arriving there to put his remarks on the podium. I do think we will hear from him shortly. After a day, October 7th, it will go down, according to the Holocaust Memorial Museum here in Washington, D.C., as the deadliest day for Jews since the Holocaust.
Yeah.
Hallie?
Peter, as we are just seconds away now from hearing from President Biden, I just want to underscore something that you talked about here, because it's an important point, with so much focus now on this hostage crisis that is unfolding in Israel, in Gaza. No plans at this moment, correct, to send in American special forces to try to extract those people?
Yeah, to be very clear, we are told, and they stress this U.S. official does, that there are currently no plans to send special forces or American boots on the ground to help in that effort to extract any American hostages. To be clear right now, there is no confirmation yet. We'll wait to hear from the president whether we, in fact, know whether the U.S. has confirmed that Americans are among those held hostage. But right now, the president is really walking this delicate rope right now, where he is not drawing any red lines about the U.S.'s willingness, how far they're willing to let Israel go at this time, but is also trying to remain at some arm's length, letting Israel reinforce its own efforts, but providing all the aid that Israel needs.
And of course, Israel, one of our closest allies. We know that the president has spoken repeatedly with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, including Peter, in just the last few minutes.
Yeah, that's right. This was the third conversation that President Biden has had with Benjamin Netanyahu. And here is the President of the United States. We'll take a pause.
Good afternoon.
Biden, listen in.
You know, there are moments in this life, and I mean this literally, when the pure, unadulterated evil is unleashed on this world. The people of Israel lived through one such moment this weekend. the bloody hands of the terrorist organization Hamas, a group whose stated purpose for being is to kill Jews. This was an act of sheer evil. More than 1,000 civilians slaughtered, not just killed, slaughtered in Israel. Among them, at least 14 American citizens killed. Parents butchered using their bodies to try to protect their children. Stomach-turning reports of babies being killed. Entire families slain. Young people massacred while attending a musical festival to celebrate peace. Women raped, assaulted, paraded as trophies. Families hid their fear for hours and hours, desperately trying to keep their children quiet to avoid drawing attention. And thousands of wounded, alive but carrying with them the bullet holes and the shrapnel wounds and the memory of what they endured. You all know these traumas never go away. There's still so many families desperately waiting to hear the fate of their loved ones, not knowing if they're alive or dead or hostages. Infants in their mother's arms, grandparents in wheelchairs, Holocaust survivors abducted and held hostage. Hostages whom Hamas has now threatened to execute in violation of every code of human morality. It's abhorrent. The brutality of Hamas, these bloodthirstiness brings to mind the worst rampages of ISIS. This is terrorism. But sadly, for the Jewish people, it's not new. This attack has brought to the surface painful memories and the scars left by a millennia of anti-Semitism and genocide of the Jewish people. So in this moment, we must be crystal clear. We stand with Israel. We stand with Israel. And we will make sure Israel has what it needs to take care of its citizens, defend itself, and respond to this attack. There's no justification for terrorism. There's no excuse. Hamas does not stand for the Palestinian people's right to dignity and self-determination. Its stated purpose is the annihilation of the State of Israel and the murder of Jewish people. They use Palestinian civilians as human shields. Hamas offers nothing but terror and bloodshed with no regard to who pays the price. The loss of innocent life is heartbreaking. Like every nation in the world, Israel has the right to respond, indeed has a duty to respond to these vicious attacks. I just got off the phone with a third call with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and I told him, the United States experience what Israel is experiencing, our response will be swift, decisive, and overwhelming. We also discussed how democracies like Israel and the United States are stronger and more secure when we act according to the rule of law. Terrorists purposely target civilians, kill them. We uphold the laws of war, the law of war. It matters. There's a difference. Today, Americans across the country are praying for all those families that have been ripped apart. A lot of us know how it feels. It leaves a black hole in your chest when you lose family. Feeling like you're being sucked in. The anger, the pain, the sense of hopelessness. This is what they mean by a human tragedy, an atrocity on an appalling scale. We're going to continue to stand united, supporting the people of Israel who are suffering unspeakable losses and opposing the hatred and violence of terrorism. My team has been in near constant communication with our Israeli partners and partners all across the region and the world from the moment this crisis began. We're surging additional military assistance, including ammunition and interceptors, to replenish Iron Dome. We're going to make sure that Israel does not run out of these critical assets to defend its cities and its citizens. My administration has consulted closely with Congress throughout this crisis. And when Congress returns, we're going to ask them to take urgent action to fund the national security requirements of our critical partners. This is not about party or politics. This is about the security of our world, the security of the United States of America. We now know that American citizens are among those being held by Hamas. I've directed my team to share intelligence and deploy additional experts from across the United States government to consult with and advise Israeli counterparts on hostage recovery efforts. Because as president, I have no higher priority than the safety of Americans being held hostage around the world. The United States has also enhanced our military force posture in the region to strengthen our deterrence. The Department of Defense has moved the USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group to the Eastern Mediterranean and bolstered our fighter aircraft presence. And we stand ready to move in additional assets as needed. Let me say again, to any country, any organization, anyone thinking of taking advantage of this situation, I have one word: don't. Don't. Our hearts may be broken, but our resolve is clear. Yesterday, I also spoke with the leaders of France, Germany, Italy, and UK to discuss the latest developments with our European allies and coordinate our united response. This comes on top of days of steady engagement with partners across the region. We're also taking steps at home. In cities across the United States of America, police departments have stepped up security around centers of Jewish life. The Department of Homeland Security and the Federal Bureau of Investigation are working closely with state and local law enforcement and Jewish community partners to identify and disrupt any domestic threat that could emerge in connection with these horrific attacks. This is a moment for the United States to come together, to grieve with those who are mourning. Let's be real clear. There is no place for hate in America. Not against Jews, not against Muslims, not against anybody. We reject. What we reject is terrorism. We condemn the indiscriminate evil, just as we've always done. That's what America stands for. You know, just over 50 years ago, I was thinking about it this morning, talking to the Secretary of State, the Vice President in my office. Over 50 years ago, as a young senator, I visited Israel for the first time as a newly elected senator. And I had a long, long trip, a meeting with Golda Meir in her office just before the Yom Kippur War. And I guess she could see the consternation on my face as she described what was being faced. They were facing. We walked outside in that sort of hallway outside her office to have some photos. She looked at me all of a sudden and said, "Would you like to have a photograph?" And so I got up and followed her out. We were standing there silent, looking at the press. She could tell, I guess, I was concerned. She leaned over and whispered to me, she said, "Don't worry, Senator Biden. We have a secret rep in here in Israel." My word is what she said. We have no place else to go. We have no place else to go. For 75 years, Israel has stood as the ultimate guarantor of the security of Jewish people around the world, so that the atrocities of the past could never happen again. And let there be no doubt, the United States has Israel's back. We will make sure the Jewish and democratic state of Israel can defend itself today, tomorrow, as we always have. It's as simple as that. These atrocities have been sickening. We're with Israel. Let's make no mistake. Thank you.
Mr. President, what was your reaction?
You have been listening to President Biden, flanked there by the Vice President and the Secretary of State, with some significant news in that forceful and emotional speech, sharing that now 14 Americans have been killed in what he described as an attack of sheer evil, terrorism, and confirming now for the first time officially that Americans are among those being held by Hamas. I want to bring in our chief foreign correspondent, Richard Engel, who is live for us in southern Israel, not far from Gaza. And Richard, you heard the president there making crystal clear that the U.S. stands with Israel.
We did, and also as he was speaking I was hearing Israeli jets flying overhead, heading toward Gaza. Israel at this moment is carrying out retaliatory strikes across the Gaza Strip. It is attacking Hamas infrastructure. It is attacking the homes of Hamas leaders. It is attacking tunnels, Hamas infrastructure. It has been intensifying the Israeli military campaign since Saturday, and over the last 24 to 48 hours, it has been intensifying significantly. The big question, however, is will Israeli troops cross the border? Will they enter into the Gaza Strip and conduct some sort of ground operation? If they do, they could put the lives of the hostages, including those Americans, at risk. So what we're seeing now is mostly a softening campaign. Israel is destroying Hamas. It is trying to cut off the region. It has cut off all supplies of electricity, food, water going into Gaza. So it is imposed a siege on the area as it bombs it from the air, and its troops are building up around the Gaza Strip for a potential invasion. But Hamas is also still on the attack. Hamas is continuing to fire rockets into Israel. We saw some of that ourselves today in the city of Ashkelon. But most of the Hamas rockets are being shot down by the Israeli defense system, the Iron Dome. And what you heard from President Biden say is that the U.S. will make sure that more Iron Dome ammunition is provided to Israel, because I can tell you they are going through a lot of these Iron Dome anti-missile defense systems in order to shoot down the Hamas rockets.
Richard, you laid out one of the crucial questions here, which is how close might the Israeli military be to a full-on ground attack on Gaza? Do we have any sense at this point, based on the reporting you're doing, based on what you're seeing as you are on the ground there, as to how close that may be?
I don't think it's imminent. I was along the border for several hours today with Israeli troops. There is a buildup. There are tanks and armored personnel carriers going into the region. There could be a surprise development, but I did not see any kind of buildup that would indicate an imminent attack or an imminent push. I think we would see a much greater degree of mobilization. So right now there are negotiations underway, but with Egypt and Qatar leading the way to try and free some of the hostages. But just in the last few minutes, right before this announcement by President Biden, I spoke directly with one of the top negotiators, and he told me that so far the negotiations are not leading to any breakthroughs.
Richard Engel, our chief foreign correspondent, thank you so much. Our Lester Holt is also on the ground in Israel, talking today with one American whose mother is among those believed to be held hostage, who described the harrowing phone call with his family as his mother was being abducted. Listen.
Brother called me again on the group call, and I heard my sister screaming and crying on the phone. And my brother told me that they both heard Hamas terrorists burst into the shelter in my mom's home, and that was when the conversation was disconnected. And
but notably, there were no shots heard.
There were no shots heard. Yeah.
So you take some hope in that?
Of course, yeah. My mom, she's a tough lady.
I want to bring in foreign correspondent Kelly Kobiea, who is joining us from a suburb of Tel Aviv in Israel. Kelly, talk us through some of the conversations that you are having with families on the ground facing this unimaginable pain.
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult for them to see what's happening in Gaza right now, knowing that their loved ones are being held captive there. The Israeli military has said that they've identified at least 50 of those being held captive in Gaza. That leaves a large number, though, of missing families who don't know where their loved ones are, whether they were captured or killed, whether they may be alive somewhere. And we spoke to a family tonight, parents of two sisters, 22 and 25 years old. They were born in LA. They've lived here for the past 14 years. Their friends say they loved to dance. They were at that music festival when all of this started on Saturday morning, and their parents haven't heard from them since. They've handed over DNA, and they're waiting essentially for a phone call. Now, some parents have said today that they really want the Biden administration to do more. They want the Biden administration to promise that they will go in and that they will help to rescue their loved ones. This family didn't tell me that. They said they are desperate to see their daughters again. All they want is to have them back home. But again, this is the kind of weight that many, many families across Israel are going through because there are so many victims and because it's taking time to identify the bodies. Hallie.
Kelly Kobiea, thank you so much. I want to bring in our Pentagon correspondent now, Courtney Kuby, who is following all of this. Court, how soon will the help that President Biden is promising to Israelis actually get there? Some of it is arriving right as we speak, and we know that our reporting indicates from a White House official or an official that even though there is technical expertise partnering with the Israelis on this hostage crisis, no boots on the ground at this point.
Right. I mean, with the exception of the U.S. troops who are already there in Israel for other, as part of a continuing missions that are existing there. So that's absolutely correct. U.S. assistance, not only is it still flowing in, some of it's already there. The USS Ford Carrier Strike Group, along with a cruiser, 4 destroyers, and all of the complement of aircraft and missiles that go along with that Carrier Strike Group, they are there in place in the Eastern Mediterranean on station. In addition to that, the U.S. is still bringing in quite a bit of air power, upwards of 24 aircraft, both fighters, F-15s, F-16s, attack aircraft, A-10s, and then those F-35s with their exquisite capabilities in surveillance, their ability to jam, and their ability to partner with the Israelis who have their own F-35s as well, Hallie. So all of that moving into place. But in addition to that, we heard from President Biden what we've all been expecting to hear now for several days, and that is that the U.S. is going to replenish the Iron Dome with additional interceptors. We heard a little bit about that from Richard Engel. Why that is so important is this is what Israel has been using to protect their skies since this all started Saturday morning. Hamas has launched upwards of thousands of these short-range rockets and artillery. The Iron Dome has the ability to launch an interceptor. We've seen a lot of video including right here, Hallie. They can launch these interceptors up and stop the incoming short-range fire. Now, one of the reasons, in addition to the fact that Hamas has launched thousands of these things, that Israel is going to need to continue to be resupplied is the fact that, think about it, when you're launching an interceptor, if you have incoming, you may not just launch 1, you may launch 2 or even 3 so that they can ensure that they take out that incoming. They're going to need more and more of these to come as long as this war continues, Hallie.
Courtney Kuby live for us there at the Pentagon. Thank you. Let me bring in now our moderator of Meet the Press, Kristen Welker. And Kristen, from the president, you heard emotion in his voice as he talked about the harrowing nightmare that so many families in Israel and here in America are living now, knowing people who are overseas in this moment here. At this point, it is a test now, this crisis, this war for all of Washington.
It's absolutely a test for all of Washington, Hallie. This is the first time that we're hearing from President Biden since Saturday when this horrific attack first unfolded. Of course, he campaigned on a promise to restore America's standing on the world stage, to bring strength in moments like this. So all eyes are on President Biden. And of course, you heard him talk about those flurry of phone calls that he had with not only Prime Minister Netanyahu, but other world leaders. He has held 30 meetings and phone calls altogether in recent days. We're also told that during this time, he did sit for a voluntary interview with the special counsel regarding the investigation into his handling of classified documents. But Hallie, make no mistake, you heard the president very clearly there say his focus right now is on the crisis in Israel. Notably, he called for urgent action on Capitol Hill. Hallie, this is a big test for lawmakers as well. Of course, Republicans without a Speaker of the House, so they are not in a position to respond, to provide more aid to Israel if that is what is being asked of them. So there's a lot of pressure for them to get a Speaker of the House installed and to get back to work, Hallie.
Kristen Welker, thank you so much for that perspective and that analysis. We appreciate it. That does it for us here for our special coverage of the president's remarks on the war in Israel. We're going to have much more ahead on our streaming network, NBC News Now, and online at NBCnews.com. Do not miss NBC Nightly News tonight when Lester Holt reports from inside Israel after the terror attack there by Hamas. I'm Hallie Jackson. This has been an NBC News Special Report.